certain amount of P cores, obviously the benefits start coming to, well, let's just make smaller cores and put more of them on and then hope for the best in terms of those productivity apps. So I think the balance that they've gone with does make sense. Like, I know there was a bit of disappointment. They were thinking of Intel was thinking of making, I think, like Bartlett Lake or something, which was meant to be 10 or 12 P cores. I can't remember quite what the rumors were suggesting. I think the rumors were saying that that chip was cancelled and there was a bit of disappointment, but as far as I can tell, like 8 P cores is probably enough. They just need to address other aspects of the design, not just add more P cores in and hope for the best.
Yeah, I guess from a purely gaming perspective, the E-cores are just a waste of silicon because they're not super useful. So I can see from that perspective, it's adding a thing to the CPU that just isn't useful to you. But as we're saying, they're necessary to make the CPU good at things other than just gaming.
Yeah, I think if anything, for a gaming part, you wouldn't want like 10 P cores or 12 P cores. You just want the E cores cut out, making the die smaller and cheaper. That's pretty much all you want.
Or making the actual individual P cores more powerful.
That's
as
right.
We've said, for gaming, we've said this for so long, which is why we haven't been bashing 6-core CPUs. As long as the cores are more powerful, you will get better gaming performance, and it's actually better to have a smaller amount of powerful cores than it is to have a whole heap of them, because you run into the scheduling issues. Like, even if you have a whole heap of P cores, there's still a latency penalty you pay when going from one core that's here and then one core that's over there. You want them to be scheduled that it's using the cores in the same sort of section, but there's a whole heap of challenges there. But anyway, I think the E-cores have been a good band-aid solution. It's probably the best way to put it.
Where are the 3s? No Ryzen 3s, no Ultra 3s. Are the 3s gone forever? Will they ever return? What do people buy instead? Older 5s?
Well, we might get an Ultra 3. Like, it's very unusual for Intel to release the Core i3, which was the traditional naming for that range, straight away. They would come... Like, if we were going to get them, you'd expect them no earlier than, say, CES, which is January of next year. So it maybe come after that, February. If they're going to, I have no insight into that.
They've only released the unlocked models, so there's never really been unlocked 3 models. Again, maybe there's been 1 or 2.
There has been some case use, but not many. One or 2 is right. So let's ignore the Intel side of things because it's too early to tell what the hell's happening there. But we haven't had Ryzen 3 CPUs, I want to say, since like the 3100 and the 3300X. Did we? Oh, we might have got like APU types. I don't know.
Maybe. It's questionable.
Yeah. Can't recall exactly, but the point is, haven't had a Ryzen 3, a relevant one, for a long time now. And the reason for that is pretty simple. It doesn't really make sense to make these cut down GPUs like it'd be a half CCS type deal.
Like 4 cores, you have to cut the die in half.
Performance isn't that great, and you're doing it on the latest node, the most expensive node. The only way you can really do it is, well, the last time they did it, as far as I'm aware, was the 3100 and the 3300X, which were defective dies that they spent years collecting an inventory of, and they sold out straight away. And they couldn't. People got really annoyed because they couldn't buy these really good value Ryzen 3 CPUs anymore. But back then, there wasn't like an AM3 platform that was worth buying into. So, whilst we recommend buying into AM5 at this point in time, but we also recognise that at the absolute entry level, the cheapest of the cheapest AM4 is still really good value. So, you sort of go that way, and that's kind of your Ryzen 3, is the AM4 platform. Dirt cheap motherboards, and you can get, there's examples of sub $100 CPUs on that platform that are usable. And even like a 5700X3D, I think they're $200. Well stock lasts type deal. So that's kind of it. AMD is doing this sort of dual platform thing, probably, I would say, into the foreseeable. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if well into the life of AM6 they're still selling AM5.
It just doesn't make a lot of sense to refresh a part that's already on the market into, like, I guess they could take a Ryzen 5 and make it a newer generation but rename it to a Ryzen 3, so effectively refreshing it, which Intel has done that a lot with Core i3s. They've often just been the last gen Core i5 renamed to a Core i3. it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. Generally, there's been good inventory of older Ryzen parts, so they're just going to be competing with their own parts that they're trying to sell at a discount. So if they've already got a $120 last gen Ryzen 5, what's the point of making the exact same part, renaming it to a Ryzen 3, and charging, again, probably like $120 for it?
Especially
you just wouldn't bother doing it.
No, especially on the latest platform where the motherboard costs are more.
That's
so
right.
you're looking at having to spend on a half-decent motherboard at least $100. DDR5 memory, decent 32GB kit, you're looking at about $100. So making a $100 CPU to go with all of that sort of stuff, while some people would appreciate that. DDR4 memory is so cheap now. The entry-level AM4 motherboards are so cheap, and therefore the CPUs are cheap. So it just makes a bit more sense to go about it that way, which I don't really have a problem with. I think having all of those options still available is really cool, and it's a pretty healthy ecosystem on AMD's part.
I think it'd be bad if the older Ryzen 5s weren't available, so there was just nothing at $100. That's when you'd really want like a Ryzen 3 type of product to exist, to at least give someone an option at that price point. But so long as the Ryzen 5s are available, they benefit from, they're usually quite well-known products. So people buying like Ryzen 5 5600s or whatever, like that was a very popular product when it launched. They benefit from all that marketing, whereas if they rename that to Ryzen 3, they've got to start again. They've got to bring up that brand awareness of that product again. There's so many complications, and just the rebrands and stuff, they're not that successful, I don't think, anymore. You want new products with a new name, generally speaking.
That's right. As we said at the start, the yields will be so good on the Zen 4 and even Zen 5 parts now. Like the CCDs are very small, like 74 square millimeters, so they're not going to get dies where half of the cores don't work. So they would effectively be selling you discounted, like they'd be lasering off working dies, which they've had, working cores rather, which they've had to do in the past. It doesn't make sense to do that when you've got other ways.
Yeah, you may as well just drop the price and sell you a 6 core for less money. Like that's pretty much what AMD does.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just wasteful. And cuts into the other CPUs they can sell cheaper because they're on older nodes and cheaper to manufacture. Anyway, so
why is Arrow Lake gaming performance so poor when it has more cache and single core performance than Raptor Lake? Could it be because of latency from their new tile architecture? Well, the simple answer to that is yes. It's most likely latency from the tile architecture.
That's certainly one contributing factor for sure, because the memory controller is no longer located with the cores. It's in a separate tile. It's in the SoC tile. So Intel said before we even got our hands on it that has increased the latency. So that's just part of the course really when you start dividing up the CPU and moving things further away from one another.